Should Conor be punished or shouldn't he be punished? It's a totally separate topic that always seems to come back to, well, the UFC needs him. And that part of it I will pick apart because that just simply isn't true. And Conor's great. That's also factually correct. And business gets a bump. But Conor walks out there twice a year. And the UFC goes every weekend. So we have empirical evidence that, no, they don't need Conor. Would they like to have him? Do they have better nights? These are all totally separate conversations that really ultimately don't tie into whether or not he should be punished. He did a bad act. We know it's a punishable act. We know that because Artem was with him when he did it. Artem was less of a principal in the action, and Artem was punished. So therefore, we know it's punishable. What do you want to do to Conor, and how bad do you want to make it? I mean, there's people that want him released from the company, and you got to slow him down on that and go, hold on a second. If you're turning to Dana to play moral police, and there is an obligation that he has to an extent as a leader of industry, that's true, and he would not deny that. But if you're hanging your hat and turning to Dana to do that, you must then understand the underlying fact that Dana needs to keep him under contract. You do not release Conor. As much as Dana can and will play ethical cop on this to a degree, he will lose all control over Conor should he release him from the contract. Dana is not the actual police. He's not the actual FBI. He's just a leader of industry who does have hand over one of his guys. So if you release him from the contract, now Dana has no ability. Not only does he have no culpability, he would have no ability. So scratch that. Do we turn to a fine situation? That would certainly seem appropriate. I think you could digress that a little bit by saying, well, you've got Michael Chiesa and you've got Ray Borg and you've got whoever else that we don't even know about. We're told about UFC employees and some other people that were harmed, whether it was PTSD or physically in the act. They are going to go ahead and take a monetary bite out of Conor. So before Dana comes in and does something, I think that it would be very reasonable for him to say, let me just sit back and see how bad this gets for him. Let's just do that. I'll just use another example. Could have and should have Dana punished Conor when he had the bottle throwing situation? Sure, absolutely. But the commission, who was expected to fine him about $20,000 to $25,000, ended up fining him $50,000. So now if you're Dana, maybe you do have to sit back and go, well, in light of this new evidence, in light of him taking a beating much worse than anybody else did, maybe we can just leave well enough alone. So it is very frustrating at times on all levels, whether it's government or sport or any of our listeners that work in a workplace and have to answer to somebody. It is very frustrating at times when somebody is very quick to react. And it is very refreshing at times when, look, the punishment is coming, but let's give it a breath. Let's see all the other moving pieces, because there are a lot of moving pieces to this situation. Let's see what happens, and maybe we come out the back side of it instead of the front side of it. That seems to me responsible and appropriate, and that's what Dana's doing. And instead of him being complimented for tempering himself and reserving judgment, there seems to be people throwing things at him for that. It's like, well, look, he's only got two options. Do you want him to strike now or do you want him to strike later? He's going to strike. He's even said that. Something's going to happen. But give me a minute and we'll figure out what it is. That seems to me appropriate by Dana. I've never seen a guy more guilty of the expression, no good deed goes unpunished. There seems to be nothing he could do but this one really seems like he's getting it right. Give him a second. Give him just a second. Mike Mazzulli did the same thing when he had the situation with Conor. Mazzulli was pissed, red hot. But he came out and he said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to sit down with counsel, and then we're going to look at this thing. And regardless of how upset he was, he is the president of the ABC. He's in a leadership position. He controlled his temperament. He looked at things objectively and calmly, and he went from there. That seems right to me.
Same thing with Covington down in Brazil.
Sure.
It's under review.
Yeah.
We're checking this out.
Yeah. Which means we don't know what the hell to do. But that's okay. You shouldn't be tasked with knowing what to do in a situation that's never arisen before. It's okay. I get so frustrated with our politicians when something happens and boom, they step in right away. It's like, yeah, I do like speed, but it's okay to take a beat. It's okay to have a dialogue, to have a debate, to have a conversation, and then form a decision. That's what judges do. They don't just bring you in and throw the book at you. They allow you to tell your side. That's important in society. For some reason, Dana gets blamed for that. I kind of scratch my head and go, well, hold on. He hasn't let anybody off the hook. In fact, he's made it very clear that there is a hook. It is, again, very appropriate to just take a second. There is a lot of moving parts here. And, a pound of flesh is a pound of flesh. So who's going to get it and when and in what order? That's something that as a leader, Dana should be complimented for. But instead, he's being insulted for it. It's just that's not right. That's a very clear-headed, objective man right there who's acting clear-headed and objective. But the lynch mob wants it now. The lynch mob wants justice right now. It's like, just hold on a second. Just hold on and let some of the pieces slow down. And we're starting to see that. We are starting to see some of the pieces start to come into play. So that's my thought on that. But Paul Daley defending him, Boss Rutan had come out and defended him too. And not from a legal standpoint. He said, no, he's got some problems. This was a bad action. But perhaps as fans, you guys should consider, when you're making your opinion here, that he did do a lot. He does have a lot in the positive column. And now he's got a couple going in the negative column. But let's be a little more fair as we judge him. Whether you agree with Boss or not, that's a fair approach. That's a fair approach to what he's saying. It's not like some kind of a pass to dangle something over a guy's head and go, hey, we're going to deal with it later. That isn't the easy way out. People keep acting as though it is or that it's just going to go away. UFC's been pretty clear. We are going to address this. That is going to get dealt with. But in fairness, they aren't the cops. They just have hand over him because of the way the contract's structured. But they don't have a current bout agreement. They don't have a current sponsorship. They don't have a current speaking arrangement. They don't have a cover of a video game. They don't have see what I'm saying? There was just nothing scheduled for Conor to then take away, whereas with Artem there was. It's tomorrow, and now you're watching it from the stands. That seems like a very fair punishment for me. Artem was a bad actor. He wasn't a terrible actor. He wasn't a instigator. I mean, he had a role, though. He was a bad actor, and he was punished. And for where he's at in his career and life, that was a big deal. And he took the weight for it, and he kept his mouth shut. He never came out and complained or bitched or anything. So it seems like we can put that one to rest. So Paul Daley coming out, I didn't know that Paul had said that. And Paul was very wrong. And Paul's one of those guys that would surprise you. He's one hell of a nice guy. But in that cage, it's different. And he was in that cage. The problem was, I'm talking about the 90-punch Koscheck. The problem was there's still rules in there. There's not a whole lot of them, but there are rules. And once that horn sounds, you stop. And he took his punishment. And he took it like a man. That really, I'm very happy to hear that he said I was wrong and I deserved that. That for me, that's refreshing. Maybe not for everybody, but I do like when a guy's wrong and he comes out and says it. I firmly believe the cover-up is worse than the crime. If you do it, boom, come as clean as you can, as quick as you can, and move on. It sounds like Paul did that. The belief that they need Conor is just simply fictional. And there's been a lot bigger stars in other sports. And Conor's great. None of this is my message. Fantastic. If I was a promoter, I'd love to have him. No way around it. But you're talking about something greatly different when you say you need him. They don't even need the cage. Okay? They could set up a wrestling mat and sell it in an arena. They could set up there's nothing they need, I guess is my point, by using the actual octagon. That isn't accurate. And there are bigger stars in other sports that have left. Michael Jordan comes to mind. I never remember seeing an NBA arena that wasn't sold out. I just don't recall that ever happening. At some point, Wayne Gretzky stopped suiting up. I don't remember that ice melting. At some point, A-Rod is going to stop playing baseball, or did, right? But you get my point. And you could just go through it, from Tyson's to Hearns to Hagler to Randy Couture to Chuck Liddell. I mean, they all go away, but the sports still stand. So no, there's never been an athlete ever bigger than the sport. It just hasn't happened, and it isn't the case now with Conor. It's just not true. So I do hear that argument, but it doesn't come from intellectuals. It just simply doesn't.